Okay, so I never like to hear people say that they are proud of themselves. Do you? I mean, I don't know. I accomplished something, I do something. I'm grateful that I had the opportunity. I'm glad it was beneficial. Maybe I made really good grades because I worked hard. Should you be proud of yourself? Well, I was yesterday, got to admit it. I went on a unassisted, meaning did not have my electric bike. I rode a regular bicycle, 18 miles, a lot of hills, and I am trying to get my legs in shape for when they have to rip my flesh open and replace my defective prosthetic for my hip. Is that gross enough? I'm not excited about it. July 15th. So for the rest of this month and all of June, I'm going to try to ride my bike every other day and strengthen that left leg because it's going to have plenty of atrophy time. I just hope that when they put this thing in that it does what it's supposed to do and my bone grows around it. Yeah, but I can tell, boy, I'm feeling it this morning, that ride. I could still feel it. Well, I guess that's because I'm old. So get used to it, Lenny. Don't complain. Be proud. Okay, so yesterday we hit the mailbag, and there was some informative stuff there. And the day before that, we talked about negotiating. The first pencil. What was that? That was when the dealership, you're trying to buy a car, and they make you a proposal. They have it on paper. Sometimes they use something called Foursquare, which is a rip-off way to get customers to pay too much on the car and focus on the payment. So we talked about that in detail. So if you didn't get it, then go back and listen to day before yesterday's podcast. I want to re-emphasize something. I got a piece in the mail the other day that is just one of those solicitations for warranty. And that's a very common question that I get from folks about their warranty. Is their warranty really expired? Is it getting ready to expire? Do I really need to buy one of these warranties? The answer is no. You might need to buy an extended warranty, or extended service contract is the official industry name. It's not a warranty because warranties are only provided by the manufacturer of a product. If it's something else that guarantees that they will repair your vehicle if a component fails, that's a service contract, okay? Let's just call them extended warranties, just for today. So if you get something in the mail that's trying to get you to buy one, don't even open the envelope. It'll say urgent on the outside. It'll say immediate attention required. And the last one I got, it was pink. It was printed on pink paper, so that was very alarming. I was in shock and terror. But people get all tore up about this. I mean, that's an East Tennessee way of saying they get anxious and upset. All tore up. But that's what happens. And, they're being deceived. So they call. They dial the 800 number. They call. And there's a nice person. I've called before. Matter of fact, there's an episode where I recorded the call with the guy. And I was put on hold numerous times, and I kind of gave him a hard time a little bit. And it's just people sitting at home. They don't want to go work. They just want to sit, at their house. Sometimes you'll hear a dog barking in the background, and they're trying to sell you an extended warranty, which probably will never pay a claim. There's more caveats in those things than liars in Congress. And we all know that's a pretty big number. Another timely thing, a lot of people are towing stuff right now. You may rent a trailer because your wife wants you to put all new mulch around the landscaping. And so you go rent a U-Haul trailer or you borrow a trailer from a friend and you load it down with stuff and take it to your house and all is well. Unless on the way home, somebody stops suddenly in front of you and you didn't put any straps over this load of mulch in these 50-pound bags and they end up in your back seat. This particular case that brought to my attention the importance of this was a picture from actually happened in Tennessee. A guy was hauling an antique tractor, and he had no intentions of going very far. But you don't have to go very far to have an accident. And so he was driving a full-size, looked like a Chevy Silverado truck. It had a bed cover over top of it, one of those fiberglass covers. And the tractor, which had been on a trailer, was now in the bed of his truck. It's because, I'm not going very far, and I'm not going to strap it down. There's really no reason to do that. Same thing with lawnmowers. If you're pulling a lawnmower around or maybe some motorcycles, whatever, or a car for that matter. It's your responsibility to strap that thing down. And even if you strap it down, there's no guarantee that it's not going to go flying. It depends on, how fast you are going when you stop, when you come to an abrupt halt. And then you have to make sure that you have strong enough straps to tie it down. So just be careful with trailering. Another thing I saw the other day was looked like a half-ton pickup pulling a very heavy trailer. It was matter of fact, it was a gooseneck. Normally you don't see a gooseneck or a half-ton truck pulling a gooseneck trailer, but it had the back end of that truck completely weighed down. The front end, looked like a boat going through the lake. It was just not good at all. What happens? What happens to the handling and the braking in that type of scenario? You're losing a lot of your weight over the front axle because it's all being pushed down on the rear axle. And the brakes may not be able to handle it. You got to consider the gross vehicle weight rating of your vehicle that you're driving. Of course, this was a gooseneck, but if you're towing something with a receiver hitch, what is the rating on that receiver hitch? What is the maximum tongue weight? Because, if the maximum tongue weight is 800 pounds and you're putting 1,200 pounds on it, will you be able to pull it? Probably. You can pull it. It's not good for your vehicle, and it could definitely fatigue the bolts that are holding that receiver hitch on. But the biggest problem with towing too much weight, it's not whether you can pull it. It's not whether you can go down the road at 55 miles an hour, because you probably can. You just can't stop it. If you have a panic stop and, that the weight of that trailer is pushing against some pretty weak brakes. Now, some trailers have brakes. The trailers that I use all have built-in electric brakes, but do you really know how to adjust those? There's a controller in the side, on the inside of a lot of trucks. All the ones that we stock, we order a trailering package, so it comes with it. But, sometimes you have to have the trailer brake controller installed in the vehicle. But if you're pulling anything of any weight, especially if it has like tandem axles or something, you need to have electric brakes, and you need to know how to set the gain on those to be able to get them to work in conjunction with the brakes on the truck. So, there's a whole process you go through to get those set. Unfortunately, a lot of places where you buy trailers and, campers and stuff like that, they just assume that you know all of this because you're buying a camper. And if you're a rookie when it comes to pulling trailers, you need to tell them that. And make sure they get you set up right. We install trailer hitches at my dealership, my new car dealership, but we don't do a tremendous amount of it because we order all of our vehicles with trailer hitches. Trucks and SUVs, Explorers. We even order trailer hitches on our Ford Mavericks because a lot of people around here, even though it's a small little 4-cylinder engine, it still has about a 3,500 towing capacity. When you're making a decision to buy a truck or an SUV, you got to kind of look out into the future a little bit and really have that dinner table discussion and think about, okay, how are we going to use this thing? Are we ever going to, buy a pop-up camper or maybe a travel trailer? Or do we think maybe in the future, sometime in the next 4 or 5 years, we might go to a fifth wheel? Maybe you have a travel trailer now and you're thinking about going up. A lot of people get in trouble because, they buy a half-ton pickup, they pull a travel trailer just fine with it, 2 years later, they're saying, honey, let's upgrade. Let's get us a fifth wheel. Well, now what? Well, the half-ton pickup has to go. And you've got to buy at least I say three-quarter ton, for Chevrolet, it'd be like a 2500 or a 3500. With Ford, it would be an F-250 or 350. Ram is about the same thing as Chevrolet, 2500, 3500. But it depends on what you're pulling. I mean, I had a guy that had a fifth wheel that he got tired of it real quickly, and he decided to trade it. I think I talked about this several episodes ago. And it was extremely heavy. It was so heavy, in fact, that a 250 or 350 wasn't adequate. It had to be an F450 dually to be able to handle the weight of that fifth wheel hitch. So this is not something that you mess around with. You got to know what you're doing. Okay, I'm going to take my first break. I'll be back here in just 1 minute. Okay, so I got a very common scenario that I want to review with you. And this type of thing may have happened to you. If it hasn't, it probably will. So we had a customer bought a 2018 vehicle from us. I'm not going to say what it was. And about a year later, it was used. It was not a new vehicle. About a year later, the warranty had expired, and not by much, but it had expired, and it had a fairly serious problem that needed to be taken care of with regards to the engine. It's a leak, and it was caused by a fault in the engine block. So he brought it into us just mad as a hornet and said, this needs to get fixed. Brought it in a couple times, matter of fact. It was hard to locate. It really was. It was just a very small crack, and it was not easy to see or find. And so we finally did find it, and then he didn't want to pay for it. He was mad because, now this, folks, this is, 2 years later after he bought the vehicle, and he was mad. He wanted us to pay for it. Well, he's out of warranty. He's had it for 2 years. Would you expect the dealership to pay for that? I don't think most people would, but they certainly would want them to. I totally get that. But that's what warranties are for, right? Warranties are designed to pay for defects in materials and workmanship for a certain period of time, or with a certain period of mileage that it has on it. When it hits a certain mileage, you're out of warranty. So here's the thing that most people don't know they can do, and most dealers don't bother because it creates a lot of paperwork, and there's a lot of phone calls that have to be made. But there are, after the warranty expires, there are opportunities and certain types of repairs that the manufacturer will help with. But the dealership has to be on board and willing to pursue it. One of the best things to do for a consumer, I don't care what brand of car you own, is to call customer assistance and tell them that what you own. Always have your VIN number, your miles, and be nice. Don't be ranting and raving, and just tell them what's going on, and tell them you'd like to have a case number and like to see what they could do. So they'll give you a case number. It's important to have that. So now you have a little bit of leverage with the dealership. Not a lot, but a little. You got a little leverage with the manufacturer. At least they're looking at it. And so then you go back to the dealership and call them. Tell them, this is my case number. I'd like to see what you could do as far as getting me some help, because this is an unusual problem. This shouldn't happen, really. It shouldn't happen on a car with that kind of miles, regardless if it's still under or out of warranty or not. Just shouldn't happen. But it did, and now we've got some wheels rolling. Okay, we got the manufacturer looking at it. We got the dealer looking at it. So we called Ford, and we worked out a deal. Ford was willing to pay half if the customer paid half. So $1,800, $1,800. Customer was still mad. Furious. He didn't think he should have to pay anything. And I don't know. How do you feel about that? I think that the burden is on him. It truly is. Manufacturer doesn't have to do anything. What is the price that the dealership or Ford Motor Company will pay for this owner of a 2018 model vehicle being mad? Well, he may never buy a Ford again. He may never darken the door of the dealership again. He may badmouth the dealership to everybody that he talks to. He could actually do some damage on Google ratings, or he could, blast them on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. Just create all kinds of ill will. So as a dealer, I have to look at this situation. I was made aware of it, and I have to look at this from a reputation perspective, but also have to be practical as far as the dollars are concerned. I can't just throw money out the door just every time somebody has a warranty claim or has a claim on a vehicle that's out of warranty. I wouldn't have a dealership, possibly. Well, it would. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. And so, you've got to guard your resources, right? But you also have to think about what's in the best interest of the customer and the dealership. So what I went and did, I did some research with my service management people, and we talked about, who the guy is and what the situation is, and I just got all my facts together, and I sat in my office and I thought about it. And I decided that the fair thing, whether it's fair or not, I'm not sure, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to pay half of his half. And so I picked up the phone. I dialed his number. He answered the phone. And I didn't tell him what I wasn't going to do. I didn't recant the whole history. He knows the history. I said, this is what I will do. And I told him. And he said, well, Lenny, that sounds fair to me. And I just appreciate it. I was talking to a customer the other day. Guy was wondering if I would recommend them buying a vehicle from you. And I said, well, at this point in my world, I would say yes, but part of that will depend on what they do on this particular situation. So, it's possible that I could have lost his business forever and lost this other customer because he wouldn't recommend us. So you really don't know, what kind of action is going to happen as a result of your decisions. But I thought that was fair enough, and I'm willing to eat that difference just to make him happy. So, one of the things I want to always coach my listeners to do is to, stay calm. When you get into one of these types of situations, it always pays to keep your head and to call the manufacturer and find out what they're willing to do and get a case number, and then approach the dealership with respect, just like you expect them to respect you. If somebody comes into the dealership and they're ranting and raving and creating a scene, which has happened before in my businesses, not often, but it happens, Some people you can't please. Some people, I swear, some people just like to create scenes, in my opinion. It's their chance to be on stage. But what I always do then, my dad always taught me, was to bring them out of the service department, bring them to your office, sit them down, let them calm down, apologize. That's the first thing we do. I said, Dad, why should I apologize? It's not my fault. It's not our fault. You always apologize. You're apologizing because you're sorry that they're upset. And Lenny, you'll be surprised how much that will diffuse an angry customer. Okay, I'll be back in just 1 minute. I was looking at my notes here, and I wrote down how to complain without burning bridges. And so there's different types of people. I think you'll agree with this. Some people just won't complain. They'll just never come back. Some people will complain because they're just mad and they want to get what they're paying for, which is totally understandable. But there's other people who want to continue doing business with this place, and they complain to help the business get better. I've always looked at it as a complaint as an opportunity to improve. And I think other businesses need to do that. The problem is that a lot of your frontline people, the ones that are taking care of customers, they don't handle complaints very well. That's why they always say, when you have a bad meal at a restaurant. The waiter rarely takes care of that. Said, "Let me get my manager." That's the first thing they do. Why do they go get a manager? Because he's been through this before. He's skilled at diffusing a situation and making accommodations. Plus, he has the authority to make an accommodation. Lots of times when you go to a dealership and you complain, that service advisor can't do anything. He has no ability to cut the price on anything. Now, we give our advisors a certain amount of leeway, but we always tell them, your number one goal is to preserve the relationship. It's not to run people off. A service department, it is not a customer rejection machine. It is a customer retention machine. And if it's not working right, then you need to figure out why it's not working right. Because, you lose one customer. The average customer, well, this was many years ago, I learned that the average customer will spend, what was it? It's a couple $100,000 or maybe $300,000 in their entire life on automotive-related purchases. That doesn't sound like near enough to me right now as expense. When you're talking about an F-250 loaded up Platinum we sold the other day, no, it was a 350. King Ranch, it was $102,000. So, that particular customer that bought that might spend $1 million in their lifetime on automotive-related purchases. Well, guess what? If you run them off, somebody else is going to get that money. So that's a lesson that I wish more businesses would take into account. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. Call me if you need me. Send me a text, 423-552-2020, or email LennyLawson2020 @gmail.com, and I'll see you on the next edition of My Car Guru.